What's a birthday without a birthday cake? I think it's just a disappointing regular day. Yes, today is my birthday, which means it's time for also, yes, me to make my own birthday cake. Which I know sounds tragic, but I actually quite like making my own birthday cake because it means I get exactly what I want. And I'm not too bad at baking. I think I make a decent birthday cake. But today is just not about my birthday cake. It's also a month until my new book, One Tin Bakes, is out. So today I thought I'd give you, it's not a recipe from the book, still not allowed to show you recipes from inside it, but I can give you a little sneak peek. It's like a bonus recipe. Basically, it's something that you would find in the book, it just happens not to be in there. There's other recipes in there that made the cut instead. So today I'm going to show you how to make the most delicious pistachio and cherry cake with a cream cheese frosting. It's really simple and it's super delicious. So because the book is called One Tin Bakes, that means everything is made in just one tin. But the question is what tin? And the answer is this one. So everything in the book is made in a 9x13 tin. It's a real classic of bakeware. Most of you will already have one in your house if you've made a batch of brownies. This is the most common tin. If not, this is the one I like. It's from Nordicware. Really good, solid piece of bakeware. Will last you a lifetime if you look after it. So it's a really simple tin to have, really easy to get hold of, but everything is made in this one tin. So for the recipe, I'm gonna make a pistachio sheet cake with a cream cheese frosting and then a nice kind of cherry topping. Now, for the pistachios, since it is my birthday, I'm gonna treat myself. We're gonna use these beautiful, vibrant green pistachios, which are really nice and soft. They're a bit moister than some of the nuts you get in the supermarket, but they are a little bit more expensive, so I am treating myself today for my birthday cake. But if you don't want to use all of the pistachios, because pistachios are just a little bit more expensive, you can use half pistachios, half ground almonds, which is cheaper, and the pistachios have so much flavor that this would still have a ton of pistachio flavor. You can also just use whichever pistachios you can get your hands on. I'm using 2/3 pistachios and 1/3 ground almonds, but as I say, any ratio of that will work. If you want to make this as an almond cake, you absolutely can, just leave out the pistachios. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add our pistachios to a food processor, and what we need to do is pulse them until they're nice and finely ground. Now, because these pistachios are soft, what you need to do is make sure you don't over process them. So once they start to break down, I'm gonna add my dry ingredients. So I'm gonna add my almonds and my flour just to help them, prevent them from becoming pasty. We want them nice and dry. Got our nice powdery dry ingredient mix, we can get on with making the cake batter. So the cake batter itself is incredibly simple. It's very classic, really. It's just a creamed butter and sugar mix. So what we're gonna do is add our softened butter and our caster sugar to our stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can just do this with electric hand mixer, that's completely fine. You could even do this with a wooden spoon, who just take a little bit longer and a little bit of arm strength. So to that, to add more flavor into it, we're gonna add the zest of 3 limes just straight into there. The reason I like to add it now rather than later, once everything's mixed, is the zest will get beaten up by the sugar and the butter and help to bring out all those oils, making a really, really flavorful cake. And you get more bang for your buck from the lime zest doing it this way. So once all of our zest is in there, we're just gonna turn the mix on for about 5 minutes until everything is light and fluffy. So you can see after 5 minutes, the mixture becomes incredibly light and fluffy. That means it will take on the eggs without curdling, and it also means that we'll get a much nicer textured, lighter cake. So we're gonna add the eggs one at a time. Crack them into a small bowl just to make sure there's no shell, that there's nothing wrong with your egg. Then we're gonna add it and mix that until it's fully combined before adding the other one. So you can see that when you add the eggs slowly and the butter and sugar mixture is properly creamed, they form an emulsion, they don't split, and that just means you've done all the right things and you're gonna end up with a beautiful cake. So before we add our dry goods, I'm gonna add a little bit of vanilla bean paste just to give a boost of flavor to the cake. Just gonna add a teaspoon or so. Just gonna mix that to combine. And then to our dry goods, I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt, just fine sea salt. Then we're gonna add a teaspoon and a half of baking powder. And then it's just a question of whisking that into combine, just into our dry goods, so that we don't have to mix it for ages in the mixer, so that everything doesn't become overmixed. Even though there's only a little bit of flour in this recipe, we still don't want to mix it for ages. So once that's mixed, we're just going to add that to our mixer, and then just on low speed, just mix it until it comes together. I like to pulse it at the start so the dry goods don't go anywhere. So once everything is combined, we can scrape that into a prepared tin and get it in the oven. So it's always a good idea before you put the batter in the tin, just to get down to the bottom of the bowl, just make sure you scrape the bottom, just in case anything hasn't combined properly. But then we're just gonna scrape the batter into our prepared tin. And then all we're gonna do is just spread it out into a nice, even layer. Now, when it comes to preparing this tin, lining it, all we're going to do is we're going to lightly grease it and then line the base with parchment. Now, I'm serving the cake in the tin. I'm not going to take it out, put it on a platter. If I was going to do that, I would also line the side, so it's just easy to remove. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. We're keeping it rustic, we're keeping it nice and simple. So once our cake is in a nice, even layer, this can go into the oven until it springs back to a light touch and is just starting to pull away from the sides of the tin. And that should take about 50 to 55 minutes. So whilst the cake bakes, we can go ahead and prepare our cherry topping. We need to pit the cherries using either a knife or a cherry pitter, and then to that we're going to add a small amount of caster sugar. Then add a little bit of lime juice, which goes brilliantly with the cherries. Then we're going to stir that all together. Now, if you want to give the cherries a boost of flavour, you can also add a little bit of almond extract, about 1/4 teaspoon, which really helps to boost that cherry flavour. So just stir everything together until the sugar is dissolved, and then set aside until the cake's finished baking. So once the cake is out of the oven, we're just going to set that aside to cool for a good while. It needs to be cold when we frost it. So what I'm going to do is make the topping. So for that, we're going to take a cherry mixture that has been sat just macerating, and it's released lots and lots of juice. So all we need to do is add that to a pan, and all we want to do is cook that for a few minutes. All we're trying to do is reduce the liquid and just cook off the cherries just a tiny bit. So we want to cook this until the liquid comes to a simmer and it stops flowing like water. So we want it just to be a teensy bit syrupy. So once our mixture's been cooking for a while, because I don't want the fruit to become too broken down, I'm going to strain the fruit out into a bowl, leaving behind liquid so that we can reduce that properly to our syrup. So this is the finished texture you're wanting. It'll be nice and syrupy, but remember, when we add it to the rest of the cherries, it will thicken further and you will have some residual liquid on there. So this will be the nice consistency that we're after. So now that we've got our cherry compote, I'm just going to put this in the fridge so that it can set and thicken up fully. Also so it's cold so it doesn't melt our frosting. And we're going to make a really simple classic cream cheese frosting. Now it's really key, it's super important that our butter and our cream cheese is at room temperature. They need to be super soft and creamy because they don't combine very well. And this is especially true with British cream cheese. It has a tendency to stay lumpy or split. So this is the real key thing when making a cream cheese frosting, especially in the UK. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the butter and the cream cheese to our mixer or in a bowl using our hand mixer. We're gonna beat those two together until they're nice and creamy. We want them to be nice and smooth, no lumps. And then what we're gonna do is add in our icing sugar a bit at a time. And then once everything's combined and we've beaten it for a good few minutes, everything should be really nice, light and fluffy. And to that, we're gonna add a little bit of salt and a little bit of vanilla, and that's just gonna help give a bit more flavor and to balance out the sweetness. And then just briefly mix that together until everything is combined. At that point, as long as our compote is chilled, we can assemble the cake. So to assemble the cake, all we're gonna do is spread over our frosting in a nice even layer. And the thing I love about sheet cakes and this sort of baking is we don't have to assemble a complex cake. It's just spread the frosting over the top of the cake. Really easy, really quick. Anybody can do it. So just spread it around, and then once that's done, we can top it with our frosting, with our cherries. So for the cherries, all I'm going to do is just randomly spoon the cherries over the top. With the compote, you can use as much or as little of the juice as possible. I like to add the cherries first and then drizzle over the excess cherry juice mixture as you go. And to finish, I'm going to sprinkle over a whole bunch of chopped pistachios. So that's the finished birthday cake, or should I say my birthday cake. I'm not going to cut into it today because it's my birthday technically tomorrow on Tuesday, but I am going to take it to the park to have a socially distanced birthday with my brother, my twin brother, who I haven't seen in 3 months. So hopefully, if I remember, I'll take a video of me cutting into it and I will show you that now. But I hope you enjoyed the video. It's inspired by the recipes in my new book, One Tin Bakes. If you want the recipe for this recipe rather than everything else that's in this book, you can click in the link down below, or it's in the corner of the video as always. I'll be back next week with something else, and then before the book comes out, I have another idea, a savory idea for using the same tin that I use in the book. Again, this is my new book. It's called One Tin Bakes, and it's out at the end of the month in the UK, 1st of September in the US. As for now, I'm gonna go and open the windows because it's 32 degrees in my kitchen and I'm very, very hot. So I will see you next week.